You're a popular band, your last album did well, and there's a bit of expectation about what you're going to do now. You've worked hard for a year or more on your latest album, and suddenly the day comes when it's actually time to release it. All that anticipation and preparation, and finally, it's time. What's that like? Welcome to the Metal Insight Podcast, episode 20, produced by Metal Ireland, where we're going to find out. Once again, our sponsors for this episode are Farmageddon Brewery, who make amazing crafted ale right here in Northern Ireland. And their main man, Owen Wilson, is going to tell you about their signature export IPA.
Yes, our India Pale Ale, West Coast style, 5.5%, but more of a kick, but with a big piney, resiny, fruity, citrusy hit. It's got, there's a lot going on.
So what is it like to properly release an album? Is it nerve-wracking, or does it even feel like anything at all in what's now a very digital environment? Today we're going to find out, and we're going to find out from a band that it's actually happening to. Tesseract, or what you might call a djent band from the UK. What is djent? Well, in a nutshell, of course, it's music that's built around the grooves that Meshuggah invented, with a range of bands having taken it onward and upward. So, James Monteith is the guitarist for Tesseract, and I talked to him just hours before the release of their new album that's called Polaris, which by the time you hear this will be on the shelves, and I wondered just what was going through his mind.
I guess we've just been working so hard up until this point. It's almost like looking forward to the relief, I suppose, that that's done and we can now focus on the next stage of the band, which is obviously heading out on tour.
I wonder, does relief, though, give way to a certain amount of tension? Because, you know, albeit that it's now in other people's hands, as it were, it's up to people to buy it and stuff like that. Is there not a sort of frantic wondering about, how's it going to sell, how's it going to be received, stuff like that?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I think, you always sort of worry about these things, but I guess, we've been doing this a while now, and you kind of get used to it. Like, I don't think there's any kind of severe nerves. I don't know, if people enjoy it, that's what we want, and if it goes down well, amazing. If it doesn't go down so well, I guess we tried our best. I don't think there's too much worrying about it, but so far, I mean, we've just put out an early stream of it, and the response has been really, really good, so far, so good.
Well, that's the thing, because that's how things are sort of different nowadays, isn't it? Because I suppose in the past, people would have thought that in the final sort of dying hours before your release date, there'd be packing boxes full of albums, or phoning the label, phoning your PR, all that kind of stuff. But nowadays everything's so digital, obviously. It's hard to know what you actually do in the moments before an album gets put out.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess in terms of the album, the physical front, there's definitely been a bit of a panic. We've had some extra pre-orders for like a limited signed version we're doing. So, the other day, a big box just turns up at my house from our manager, and it's like, right, get everyone to sign these, and then I send them off by, when's it out? Friday. I probably need to send them off tomorrow, actually. Yeah, so there's some sort of panic rushed stuff like that, but in a way, it's kind of good. I guess we're selling more than we initially thought we would. So, but then again, like in this world, like sales really aren't very much. People don't really buy music anymore, so. To be honest, to sell anything feels like a massive bonus.
Indeed, and I suppose that you were talking there about signed editions and things like that. I mean, have you felt under pressure, not from outside forces, but even just amongst yourselves? Have you felt under any pressure to come up with any new kind of, ruses or, things to do? You see these extra value-added stuff. I mean, have you had to sort of force your mind to think about that in any way, or are you just putting the album out?
No, we've definitely thought a lot about that. We've got the regular CD, but we've also got like a special edition that's like really nice packaging. It's like more of a thing that you'd want to own rather than just a piece of music. They're like sort of like the vinyls and that kind of thing. On the posh version of the CD, you also get a 5.1 surround sound mix as well. We've definitely thought a lot about giving a little bit extra because
you have to.
Well, you have to really, and I'm kind of the same as a consumer. Like I don't. To be honest, I can't really be bothered with CDs because they take up space. That sounds really bad, but I will gladly buy a record if I think the whole package is really beautiful and worth having for that. I'll probably never ever play it because I'll listen to the digital version.
It's important to own it. But I mean, you said something very interesting there a moment ago. I mean, you said that all of us exist in this genre where sales now are basically a nice add-on to the fact that you've made a lovely record. But there's a flip side to this, and that's your record company, and they're not a charity, and presumably they have a very different idea about all of this.
Yeah. But again, I guess record company advances now aren't what they were even 10 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. So everything's done on a very tight budget. And again, they're driven by, driven to create really nice products to sell. And I guess there is still a market for that. Like vinyl sales are on the increase, which, is quite interesting and also very cool. But also there's other sides to it. There's sort of licenses, licensing music for various things. And also streaming. Streaming does bring in money nowadays. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, but services like Spotify and Deezer are absolutely vital now.
It's interesting. I mean,
as a revenue stream and as a marketing tool. Sorry, Karen.
And I mean, I suppose maybe the audience would like to know. I mean, what is a record company saying to their band in the hours before release? What are the label? What are they saying to you? What are they phoning you and saying to get in gear? What are they emailing with?
I guess most of it is making sure the marketing's spot on. Today we put out the streams, so it's vital that through all of our social media channels, personal and band ones, we're pushing it to our fan base. We've also been dropping out the little teasers. I think. And also, doing some more sort of radios, interviews, and sort of immediate kind of media stuff to give it give the pre-orders a push. So I think that's basically what they're saying to us. It's just a big drive to get the momentum going.
If you had a piece of advice then obviously, we've all grown up in metal bands, and obviously we all just want to get signed. And obviously that dynamic is changing, in the last 5 to 10 years. But what advice would you give a band about to put out their new EP or their new album? Would you say drip, drip, drip promo, or would you say, get it all in one big splurge and go for it?
Actually, I think the bit of advice I would have before you even get to that stage is make sure that you're really, really happy with what your music and your product and what you're putting out, because in the internet age, even though it's made everything a level playing field, it also means that anyone could put out any music, and it's very easy to put out music. So I think to get noticed, your music has to be the very, very best it can be, and your image and your product all needs to be the very best it can be. And once you're happy with that, then start worrying about how you're going to release it. Just because you do see so many bands who are pretty decent, but they've clearly just sort of dived into it without giving as much thought as maybe they should have done.
The new album is expansive. It is really, really confident. You totally know what you're trying to do, and you know what you're doing.
Thank you.
What do you think of the new album? I mean, it's certainly a step forward, but what were you trying to do with it that was different than before?
I think that's the kind of funny thing. We weren't actually trying to do anything. Quite often, the way the music comes about is sort of Ackle's kind of the core ideas generator, and he basically just chucks out loads of riffs, and then they kind of become songs. And I guess what we do try to do is make sure we don't do anything that's uninteresting. Like if we think it sounds like something else, or it's it's not exciting us, then we don't do it. We just basically make sure that what we're putting out we really enjoy and we're happy with. And basically following those rules, we've ended up with this record. I think other things that have changed, I think the song writing might have matured a little bit. Like it's, I don't know, it's a little bit more palatable, I think. And again, that wasn't something we set out to do. It's just kind of how it's turned out.
Very interesting that you say that, because that was the first thing that I thought whenever I heard it. I thought, I wouldn't say it has softened. I wouldn't say it's necessarily more... I did use the word poppy when I reviewed it myself, but I didn't mean that in the pejorative term. I meant it has the potential to be popular, and there's no problem with that whatsoever. You say it's more... What was the word you used? Sorry, you said it was more... palatable. Yeah, it is a bit softer, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just... I know... Like, it's kind of like a collection of songs. Some flow from one to the other, but there are no sort of like 30-minute sort of epics. And the metal side, it's still heavy, but it's been kind of toned down a bit. There's a lot more focus on some dynamics and melody, and lots of the layers. Less on sort of heavy riffs, even though there are some heavy riffs. I don't know, it's definitely more of a prog rock record, I think. Well, prog metal record.
Very much so. Nonetheless, though, I do think Dystopia, which obviously opens it, it's probably the heaviest song on there, maybe give or take. But tell me this:
I'd agree.
I thought that Dystopia, nonetheless, very much overshadowed the rest, possibly because it's just so immediate and so groovy and so in your face and satisfying. But I did think it sort of overshadowed the rest. Any thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think it's as you say, it's like the heavy track, and it's very immediate. I know. I guess it's the beginning of like the journey of the record, because I know the track that follows that is quite a lot more complex, sort of melodically, and then there's the sort of poppy single after that, and then there's a mellow track after that. I don't know. I don't think we ever intended it to sort of be the standout one, but I guess maybe because of its heaviness, it possibly is to some people, including myself.
The thing that strikes me when listening about it is the very crisp and clipped tightness of that track, and something that came to mind to me was actually Michael Jackson. There's a very tight, snappy, syncopated groove in it that would recall the likes of, I don't know, some of the 80s Michael Jackson rockier sort of classics. It's just really tight, snappy, punchy, groovy. I don't know. I mean, what was the brief for that song?
Again, I guess there was no brief. It just kind of happened. But I mean, all of us are Michael Jackson fans. We can all agree on that. And also, Dan's vocals even sound quite Michael.
I think
Jackson.
They do. I actually think they do. Yeah.
I don't know. It's I think one thing on the whole on this record that's really come out is our sort of funkier, groovier side. Again, moving away from like the straight kind of undynamic sort of metal rhythmic style to something, I don't know, a bit more from the 70s.
Well, look, I can't not ask, right? And it's not an accusation, but you've heard it a billion trillion times before, but nonetheless, I'm just going to rehearse this. Meshuggah, right? The plain fact of the matter is that if Meshuggah didn't play the way they played, the basis of your band probably wouldn't exist. Is that a fair...
So who are Meshuggah? I've never heard of them.
You've never heard of Meshuggah?
No, I'm obviously joking.
Quite. But you know what I mean. Are you too indebted to them? That's what I'm asking.
No, I don't think so. I think Meshuggah obviously played a massive influence, very much in, I guess, the way that they, basically, I guess, some. I was going to say obvious. The obvious thing is, the sort of the single string kind of complex rhythmic kind of riffing style. I think that's the main thing that we've taken from them. Us and a lot of other bands in the scene owe them a massive debt for that. Bands like sort of Periphery, Animals as Leaders, all of us. None of these bands would exist if it wasn't for what Meshuggah invented, basically. But then I guess the analogy I pull is if, like, I don't know, Slayer hadn't written Rain and Blood, you wouldn't get half the thrash and metalcore bands that exist today. It's like there are certain bands that do revolutionary things, and then the next sort of round of bands take influence from that. I guess what Meshuggah did was just so unique and different compared to other metal bands. It stands out quite a lot.
I think so. I think
yes, we owe Meshuggah a massive debt. I will not deny that.
I think we're sort of at the point now in what you may want to call djent or just metal generally, where once one would have compared or said to bands, "Oh, you're derivative of Meshuggah." I think we now accept what Meshuggah did as a bona fide musical and metal style in its own, just in and of itself, where it's now acceptable that is the sort of base format and that you just work upon it, much as you said, like Slayer or, I don't know, Bathory or something,
Exactly, yeah. It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
And to be honest, on this album, you're actually the first person I've spoken to. I've done many interviews. I've actually brought that up, and I'm kind of glad you did, to be honest, because I think we shouldn't forget where our major influence came from.
You are, of course, inextricably linked with the djent genre, subgenre, call it what you will. It's been a fascinating thing to watch over the last 10 years, basically one-man bands evolving into proper bands and making pretty good records. That's the way Tesseract did it, I guess. How hard was the journey from A to B there? I mean, you went a long way in a short space of time,
Well, I guess the journey for Tesseract's been about 13 years now, or 12, 13 years. It's basically just been a long, gradual process. It's not been that difficult. It's just been very, very long, I think. Because Ackle did it in his bedroom, basically, for about 5 years. Then in 2006, all the instrument players in the band now joined him there. And we just used to get together, like, once a month, probably even less than that, once every 2 months. And to be fair, back then it took that long to learn the parts because we're quite new to this new way of sort of thinking. And we'd all sort of learn some of the stuff that he'd written, and we'd all get together, play it for a weekend. And then this process sort of happened for a couple of years. And we didn't play our first gig until late 2007, actually. But then it was just very gradual. We just did a few pub gigs, and we struggled to get gigs anywhere else, actually. Nobody was particularly interested in booking us. Until we caught a break, actually. The guy who runs Scuzz TV, Alex Heron, heard us, and he was sponsoring a stage at Bloodstock Festival. And he gave us our first ever gig that was not in a backroom pub. It was at Bloodstock. I think that was 2008. And basically things like that just happened. Somebody would hear us who were able to give us an opportunity and gave us a shot. I think our first ever international gig was in 2008. It was in Portugal. There was like a random festival headlined by Nile. And the festival organizer said, "Oh, I really like you, come over." And we're like, "All right then." Cost us a load of money to get there, but we treated it like a holiday.
Yeah.
And just from then on, opportunities kept coming up, and then.
But it took you to America very quickly, didn't it? Which.
But that was when we got signed to Century Media in 2010. Yeah. They signed us up and basically said, "Okay, right, we want to get you to the States and get you out on the road because we think this is good and we think that people will like it." And they hooked us up with a tour with Devin Townsend, and that was like the first proper big thing we ever did.
But that was, that's you guys' dreams come true all in one, isn't it? Devin Townsend tour.
Absolutely. I think at that point, before we even had a record out, we felt like we'd made it. We were suddenly touring the States, supporting Devin. That was pretty insane. And then we went back out there to do Protest the Hero when one came out, and we went back out there again to do Between the Buried and Me, and then we've just been on and off touring ever since.
It's funny. I managed to catch you in Belfast. I can't remember who you were supporting about a year or two ago. It wasn't Slayer, was it? Who were you supporting in Belfast?
Did we do a few days of Lamb of God?
Oh, Lamb of God. Yeah, that's who it was probably. It converted me because I thought. And maybe this was the house, maybe it wasn't you guys, but the light show, all the blues and the purples around what you were doing just really, really brought it somewhere. And I thought the vocals at that time, that was when I realised the vocals just really, really soared, really well. The vocals really brought it somewhere very dreamy, and you could really go with the band. And that was when I knew it really, really worked. I mean, I don't know, do people say that to you, that there's quite a distinction between the live Tesseract and the studio Tesseract, or do you feel that they're actually... that they are the same thing?
I think for us they're quite similar. Live it's definitely a lot more organic. We sort of mess around with it a little bit more, and we develop the tracks a little bit more in the rehearsal room. So yeah, it's musically always a little bit different. Maybe not at the start. Like when we start playing the new album stuff next month, it'll be kind of the same, but the tracks kind of evolve a little bit just as we tour. And then I guess the light show adds lots of ambience.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've heard varying things. Some people have said that it's like live, really hypnotic, and you sort of just get lost in it and absorbed.
It sort of was. I would agree with that. Actually, it definitely was. I mean, it has that kind of warped heartbeat pulse. That the likes of Catch 33 have when you listen to it in headphones. It had that kind of pulse. I think I'm very much looking forward on the new album. Maybe if I can catch you again someday. But I think one of the other awesome tracks there must be Messenger. Tell us a little bit about that track.
Okay, well, that riff idea came from when, after we played Soundwave last year, we watched Alice in Chains, and basically there was this one riff that Alice in Chains played. It's one of their new tracks, and I can't remember what it's called, but it was like very low tune, single string, kind of heavy riff that was quite different to the sort of style we play.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just started messing around with that, and then the Messenger riff for about a year was known as Alice Rip.
Yeah.
Because we thought it was an Alice in Chains rip-off. Obviously, since then, it's evolved into something which doesn't hopefully sound like Alice in Chains anymore.
I wonder, is it Last of My Kind or something like that? Is it one of those ones off Black Gives Way to Blue? That really dirty, dark, low riff?
Yeah.
I know the one.
Yeah.
Fucking great album.
I think it was just like the tone and the energy that they had when they played it, and so in a way it was inspired by that.
Mm-hmm.
But then it just evolved naturally as these things do into a song.
But then there's the real ambient stuff, the real floaty stuff like Tourniquet and stuff like that.
Yeah, again, a lot of that was sort of some mellow riffs that Dan did a lot of work kind of developing. It's quite a vocally led track, that one.
And that leads us perfectly to Dan. He's back. How are things? I mean, obviously he was away for a bit. Now he's back. How has he been received back, or what led to it, or what's going on there?
I guess short story. At the end of the last album cycle, Ash wasn't feeling it. Didn't really want to do it. The last tour wasn't very enjoyable, and so we all decided to part ways. Well, we parted ways with him, and so he basically left because he wasn't that in. It just wasn't working for him, and so we're stuck without a singer again. And so we hit up Dan, going, "Oh, we're in a bit of a pickle. We've lost a singer again. Do you want to come back?" And he said yes. So he came back, and then we wrote a record. That's a very short version.
Fairly straightforward. But I suppose, I mean, do you think you'll ever go back to the dirty vocal, or is it just a thing of the past now? It probably is, isn't it, really?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, never say never. I mean, there are some dirty vocal moments on the new record. There weren't any on Altered State. Altered State was 100% sort of clean melodic vocal record. On Polaris, there are moments where it's used as a texture and a layer, like, but it's not like, it's not anything at the front of the mix. I mean, I think we want to use it more as a dynamic tool rather than like a lead vocal thing. But I mean, that may change.
Yeah.
I mean, never say never. I mean, one of the reasons why we moved away from it wasn't because we don't like heavy vocals. It's partly because whenever we did anything heavy, it just sounds like everything else.
Of course.
Every metal band has that voice.
Yeah. And
to be honest, now, like, quite often I put on like a modern metal record and I hear blah, 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 and I just go, oh really? Like, let's hear something else. Let's do something different.
I suppose though that's largely dictated though by how much you actually have to say, because if you actually have something to say other than just bollocks, then it actually does sound good, even if it's that same tonality. If you actually give a shit about what you're saying, it rather cuts through,
Well, an aggressive vocal does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do see what you mean. I just think that, again, I guess our philosophy is to not sit, just rely on the things that work and try things that are different.
Indeed.
And to be honest, when I hear kind of that same vocal tone used all the time, I'm just bored of it.
Yeah. Do you think are you bored of djent now? Are you sort of bored of that association now? Do you think it has been what it was and it's time to move on with the world?
Yeah,
or
exactly. I think it had its time in history, which was around about turn of the decade. And lots of those the bands that were all involved then have all evolved into doing different things, like bands like Periphery and Animals as Leaders and Monuments are all very much in different directions and don't sound like the bands they were 5 years ago, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's what's needed in this kind of, I think if you're in a genre which is called progressive, then all the bands need to continue to be progressive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think, but then that's just my own taste. I just get bored of stuff that sounds the same. Lots of people like stuff that does sound the same. So
indeed,
there's probably a place bands that do sound the same as bands 5 years ago.
We, it is. This is going to go out. We're here on Friday. This is release day. What would success actually look like to you today?
Success, I think. Success would be a very positive response from. A positive response from the fans, and longer term, people coming out to our gigs and enjoying themselves. I think, let's have some realistic goals. It'd be like we've got a lot of touring kind of set out, and just people to turn up and be into the music would, for me, be a success.
Very humble definition of success there from James Monteith of Tesseract, and it's maybe something that bands trying to get on in the game can listen to and learn from. That's it from the Metal Insight from Metal Ireland Podcast, episode 20. We'll be back shortly with another episode. If you want to get in touch with us to talk about the podcast, whether you want to be on it, whether you want to advertise on it, just get in touch with mi@metalireland.com. That's mi@metalireland.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So over and out for another Metal Ireland episode. See you soon.